Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Welcome back. It's another edition of your very favorite podcast. We hope talking books and writing and stuff. And today we're going to do all of that. We're talking books and writing and stuff with Gary Goldstein, author of a couple of books he's got out, and we'll talk about that. He's also been involved in the movie business. We'll talk about that and all sorts of other neat stuff, including sort of a Saskatchewan connection there. So, Gary, you're in Los Angeles area, I assume. How things going down there?
Things are very hot here right now. We're in the middle of a very major heat wave, so we've had a very, very nice summer weather-wise, and it's just gotten very hot right now. So just got some air conditioning on and trying to keep cool.
Well, we're up right now in Northwest Washington, they call it, and it is warm for here as well. So that's what's happening around the world these days. And then when
absolutely
this will be heard forever, so people will be hearing it 2 and 3 years from now, and they'll say, "Oh yeah,
right.
That's true. That's what's happening."
Yeah.
So,
it's hotter now.
Yeah, it's hotter now. Gary Goldstein, you're born and raised in California, were you?
No, I was actually born and raised in New York. I moved out to California many years ago for my work, but I was born and raised in New York, went to college in Boston University, moved back to New York for a few years after college to work, and then was brought out here by the company I was working for, and then switched over a few years later to become a writer. And have never looked back.
Never looked back. Okay. What drove you to become a writer?
Well, it all started when I was in high school. Initially, I wanted to be a film critic. I wanted to be a film reviewer. And so I was the film reviewer for the high school newspaper, for the college newspaper. I was a journalism major. But then when I graduated from college, I realized that film reviewing just wasn't, there wasn't kind of an immediate route into actually making a significant living with it. Not significant, but a regular living with it. And I ended up sort of accidentally getting into movie publicity. And so I started working as a movie publicist and did that up in Boston for a number of years, then down in New York, and then moved out to Los Angeles. I was working for Universal Pictures and spent about 4 years at the studio doing that. And then at a certain point, I just said, I've got to go back to my love of writing, and I decided to try to take a crack at writing for television. I ended up getting assignments working for different TV shows, and then sort of morphed into writing movies and writing some screenplays and getting some of those sold and made, and getting other work. And then I sort of expanded into writing stage plays. And eventually started writing novels. So it's been kind of I've kind of kept it all going. I wouldn't say it's a reinvention as much as a kind of expansion of what I do. And it's worked out pretty well.
That's good. I'm glad that somebody's making a living as a writer, which often or not doesn't quite work out. So what?
I know.
As a professional writer, what is the hardest lesson you had to learn?
Well, actually, there are probably a few lessons. One is that anything you're writing makes you a writer. When you start off writing, you want to write for television, and you do that, and then you have to go off and do something else to make some money or bridge the time between assignments or whatever. And I realized that there's other kind of writing that I could do that I could make a living from, in between things. So I went and did some of those as well in between. And whether it was press kit writing, publicity writing, journalistic writing, and it all kind of falls under the heading of writing. And each discipline kind of feeds the other discipline. And as long as you're working and writing and putting words together and using that muscle, I think it's really valuable. So I think a lot of writers feel, well, if I'm just not screenwriters, let's say, if I'm just not writing a script, I'm not really a writer. Not really true. Oh. There's a lot you can do, and it's really about just keeping the the batteries charged. So there's that. I'd say the other lesson was especially when I started out, it takes a long time. I mean, you hear those stories of these, overnight sensations where somebody writes a screenplay, and it sells and gets made, and they're off and running. But that's really rare. I mean, we all pay our dues in one way or another, and it definitely can take a while to get steady work or relatively steady work. And I just always caution writers when they're starting out: be patient, and if this is what you want to do and this is the only thing you want to do, dig in, commit, but just know it can take a long time, and just and keep writing, and don't take it personally. This is not it's so much about writing is what's on the page, not who you are. I think creatively we tend to take things seriously and ourselves seriously, but I recommend people don't. Just take the work seriously, don't take yourself seriously, and hang in there, and it should hopefully work out.
That's right. And we've got a book in front of us by Gary Goldstein. It's called The Mother I Never Had, a novel. Also, you've had The Last Birthday Party. So
Right.
Why do you write, and especially why now are you writing books?
Well, I had always wanted. I've been writing for a long time, writing scripts for a long time, and I had always wanted to write a book. I've been a big reader my whole life. I'm always reading something, and I just decided that I just was going to take the time and do it. It always felt like I just can't take this chunk of time to write a novel. It's just going to be very, very time consuming, and do I have a story I want to tell? And there's always some other assignment work to do, and I just felt like it was going to be hard to get it done. And I just a few years ago, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to do it, and I ended up writing my first book, The Last Birthday Party. Turned out it was kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. I started right before that. I started in January of 2020, but then once the pandemic kicked in, the industry shut down a lot, so I had a little more time and was home much more, and I was able to see the pages pile up. And by the end of that summer, I had the first draft of the book written, and did an edit on it, got a professional editor to take a look at it, and started shopping it around to agents and to publishers, and got a publisher later that year. And we were off and running. And then I learned so much from writing the first book and marketing the first book. I was like, I've got to do this again. And I had another idea that I wanted to do. The Last Birthday Party was a romantic comedy, kind of a Hollywood set romantic comedy. This other book, this new book, The Mother I Never Had, which I wrote last year, and I got a publisher at the end of last year. That book is much more serious. It's family drama. Most of my work has been comedy, dramedy, a lot of romantic comedy, but this is a very serious story. I think it's it's something that people have grappled with for a long time, discovering parents or relatives that they never knew existed at a later point in their life as an adult, and kind of what you do with that when you find out. And this is it was a story that was just kind of interesting to me, and I started writing it again very beginning of last year of 21, and by the fall was done with the draft. And took it from there. So I'm really happy with it. I'm very excited about it. I think it's a very meaningful story, and it was fun to write some very serious drama, and tug at some heartstrings, and hopefully write about things that people will relate to on a serious level. And hope people enjoy it.
I hope so too, because I am, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through. I can't say I've finished because I have, I review books and talk to authors, and I have a stack here. And
Right, I'm sure you do.
Every day I read 10 books, but only a chapter at a time, so you can understand. So, The Mother I Never Had and The Last Birthday Party, they both from Hadley House Publishing?
Yes, Hadley House, which is a relatively new publisher. They're an independent press they're based in Minneapolis, around Minneapolis, and they've been just really great to work with. They really take chances on some material, and they've just done a really terrific job from the writing to the marketing, the editing rather, to the marketing, and all of that. So it was a very, very positive experience. And writing novels, is very gratifying for a writer because it's kind of a very kind of unified vision. I think it's great getting input, the right kind of input when you write, and you can't write in a vacuum, and all of that. But there's something kind of gratifying about telling your story kind of the way you want to tell it. And but I had very good editors on the books, and they really helped me shape it, and shorten them, and really kind of make the best parts of the story jump out. So that was really helpful, and great lesson. Another great lesson in writing and editing and collaboration.
And we're talking with Gary Goldstein out of Hollywood, involved in movies and writing books. The Mother I Never Had, the latest one, The Last Birthday Party before that. They both seem to have come about quite quickly, which seems rather odd to all the other people I've talked to, where, I've got a book coming out in 3 years, we've signed the contract, and here you've had two of them in the last 2.5 years. How did that happen so quickly? It seems quick to me anyway.
Yeah, well, it is relatively quick, but I think the thing was that I wrote them relatively quickly, and I think as a screenwriter who's been on lots and lots of deadlines, you learn to write fast. You learn how to kind of prioritize your ideas and how to get them down on the page, and not perseverate over anything too specifically, because we know that things change a lot and all of that. And I think the hardest part of writing is just getting it down on the page. The editing part, the rewriting part of it, I always find is easier as long as there's something down there to begin with. And so I've become good at writing faster than I might have, but it still takes a tremendous amount of time and care. With independent press, smaller press, the schedules are different. On the if you're dealing with one of the major publishers, they're very backed up. It can take a year and a half, 2 years from the time you sign a contract for the book to come out. Independent publishers are a little bit different, but even then, each book took about a year. Will have taken about a year to come out, and it goes through it's very similar editing process and marketing process, and setting it up for the world process. So fortunately, it can go a little bit faster. And also, you write a book, and a few years later, things change in the world. So the quicker the book, relatively faster the book can come out, the more chance that it'll remain relevant, which I think is kind of important, because things do change fast.
And talking about writing, is there any advice, some good advice people gave you that you totally ignored?
Oh, good advice? Oh, interesting. Let's see, what have I ignored? I've definitely ignored a few things. It's a very good question. I think there are, I'm a big believer in outlining, and most people will tell you, a very full, detailed outline is really, really important before you sit down to write, whether it's a full screenplay or a full novel, and I generally agree with that. I would say I've done more outlining for my scripts than for my books, and I've written many stage plays also, which are a little more similar in process to writing a book than a screenplay, just in terms of there are a little fewer rules with it. And so I probably have not done the kind of outlining along the way with those that I do for screenplays. The same with the books. I know what I've had tons of notes. I know where I'm going. But I also story structure, having written so many screenplays and TV movies and TV scripts, is it's kind of ingrained in my head. So I kind of almost automatically kind of know where I'm supposed to be, or I should be story-wise along the way. So I've got that framework in my head all the time as I'm doing it. But I would say, there are times when I probably should have done more outlining before sitting down to write. That's one thing. There are people who are not outliners and say, I don't believe in outlining, but I do. And I think there are times where I should pay a little more attention to the outline. But all that really means is that you just do more work during the writing process and the outlining process. One way or the other, you have to make decisions, and you have to, put your story together and put your list of scenes together. So it's just kind of whether you do it beforehand or in the middle of the process. So I would say, maybe listening to more people about outlining now and then would be a help. But I've learned so many lessons myself about writing over the years that I feel like I can tell so many people like what I've learned the hard way for them to the pitfalls to avoid. We all start off with a certain approach, a little more optimistic or pie in the sky approach, and then reality kicks in, and you kind of realize how the various businesses operate and how you can function within them. What's the best way for you to function and be productive and successful within the way these businesses work. And that's always pretty eye-opening, but they're really important lessons.
And advice that you would pass along to people? Just keep at it. Is that the main thing, or what do you tell people when they ask you, "How do I become a writer?"
Well, there are a few things. One is why do you want to write? Is it because you have stories to tell? Is it because you love the process of creation? Is it because you want to make a living? Is it because you think it's cool? I mean, what's the real reason you want to go write? A lot of people think, oh, writing what a cool job. You sit in a chair all day and you just come up with ideas and you're done. And it's like, well, it's a little bit more than that. So I think some people have a kind of it's kind of a misperception of what the process of writing is. And not everybody has a writer's temperament. You really have to have patience. You have to really be able to sit yourself in a seat for a long time. You have to know that things take a very long time, that you don't just sit and write something that's done in a day. That things evolve, they change. So I always tell writers, if you are going to be a writer, just be really, really patient with the process, learn the process, understand the process, and if you're going to be whether you're a novelist or you're a screenwriter, playwright, read and watch other things. It's very inspiring. If you're a novelist, read other books that are great books, or books that are good books within the genre you're writing. Same thing with movies. Same thing with television, with plays. Be a master of your universe, because there's so much you can learn from the good things that are around you, and it's not about duplicating it as much as sort of being inspired by it. And sort of having your head infused with all the positive ways in which this work is created and what the effects are. And also I say, do you have stories to tell? Not everybody has a story to tell. How do you figure out what kind of stories to tell? What do you want to tell? What's your genre? Do you love books? Do you love movies? Do you love television? Or like I said, is it just you think a cool way to make a living? Because if you take that route, it's not a cool way to make a living, because there's a lot more to it than that. But like any kind of creative endeavor, acting, directing, producing, it's kind of in your blood, and it's something you have to do, and you generally know that. If you have to start questioning, do I want to do it? Should I do it? Am I right for it? You may not be right for it. So I think it's very important to listen to yourself and understand what kind of personality you have for the kind of creative work that you think you want to do.
Now, do you have a daily routine, or is your daily routine whatever happens? Well,
it's on most days it's relatively similar. I get up real early. I have breakfast, read the paper. I still read a physical newspaper. I'm one of those people, and I sit down at my computer at like 8 o'clock and usually take care of a little paperwork or business. But I try to start writing whatever project I'm working on early, and just try to get as much done as I can until lunch, and then have lunch and take a little time off, and then write again in the afternoon, have dinner, blah, 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 work for a few hours at night. On kind of an average day. I'm as a writer, you feel like they say it's like being a writer is like having homework 24/7. It's just there's always something to do. So you kind of, the nice thing about writing, based upon your schedule, based upon any deadlines you may be on, it enables you to kind of create your own schedule and understand how you work the best. Some people work really well in the morning. I think I work best in the morning, in the early part of the day, and get the most amount done in the early part of the day. But when I'm on a deadline, and if it's more of a time crunch, everything sort of goes away. Everything is sort of pushed away, and I'm not taking time off to watch any TV or talk to anybody or go out. I'm just there working, and then it gets done, and then it's over, and then you have a little more freedom. So it depends, and you have to be the kind of person who likes that, who doesn't get antsy doing it, and doesn't want to be out socializing when you need to be working. It's a little different. It's a little different discipline. Sometimes people will say, "Well, God, how do you get so much work done? How are you so disciplined?" And I say, I don't know if I'm that disciplined, but if I don't do it, the work doesn't get done. It's not like you have a staff of people who you can just say, go do this, go do that, and it gets done. It's really, as a writer, it's really up to you. So I think that motivates too. It just really motivates you to keep going and to create your schedule. And I find there's a comfort zone in the schedule of things. And when my days are different, or I'm away, or I have a vacation or something, I do miss the regularity of my days. But everybody's approach is going to be very different. Some people have to work. Can't work in the house. They have to work in a coffee house, or they need to go to a restaurant or a park or be around people. I personally do best just holing away in my house or my backyard and just and just writing. I don't like having a lot of activity going on around me. I like to focus a little bit more. Everybody's different.
Yep.
You find your way.
Gotcha. And you've written for television, movies, stage. Books, of course, The Last Birthday Party by Gary Goldstein and The Mother I Never Had. Now, when you write television or a script, let's say, for something that goes on a screen, is it really as exact as I think it is? Like Joe comes in from the left and he's wearing a plaid shirt and he's got a rip in his elbow. And is it really that detailed when you write a script for film?
It depends. You write a script to be made, to be seen, but first to be read. So on one hand, you don't want to get too detailed because you don't want to play the director. Things change so dramatically. And yet you want to write something that's entertaining, that's vivid, that you feel like, the best thing somebody can say after they read a script is like, wow, I feel like I just watched the movie. So the tendency is to try to be colorful and specific in the description and the writing of your characters, in the locations, all of that, because you're just kind of see, in a book you really have to have all of that because there's never going to be, it's your only chance to create a vision, whereas in a screenplay you may write it, but the vision ultimately will be the director's vision visually, and everybody else who works on the film, and not just your words. So it becomes way more collaborative. I've always tried to make my work really vivid and jump out and entertaining, and have the read be entertaining aside from just this is a good story, or these are good characters, or it's funny or romantic or whatever. It doesn't have to be that specific all the time, but as a writer, I think you want to just, like I said, make it the best read you can, and then turn it over to the movie gods and let them see what they do with it.
Now, when you write for television, is it like a bunch of people in a room and then you just bounce things around and somebody gets the credit for the episode, or how does that work?
Yeah, generally, when you're on staff on a TV show, that's generally, that's generally how it works. Although things have changed a lot over the course of time with streaming series, because it used to be on network series, there'd be however many, 22 episodes a year. Mm-hmm. You'd be shooting as you were writing. So as the episodes are being written, so everybody who's on staff has an opportunity to kind of be on set, be on your episode as it's shooting or filming, and learning along the way. So there's that part of it, but so much of television, as you know, is these short seasons of streaming, and so it can be 8-10 episodes on a Netflix show or a Hulu show or whatever, and it's still considered television, but it's shorter, it's more compact, and everybody's writing. You're writing your show, but then they shoot it after all the scripts are written. So you as a writer are much more done by the time things start shooting, and you learn a little less about the process as a result of that. I've written for television these last number of years, last 10, 12 years, I've written many, many TV movies, and that process is more like writing a theatrical film or a feature film, because you're writing the script, you're working with, with your producers and network executives and so on to craft the story, and you go through outlines and drafts of the script and so on, and then once it's done, and if it gets a green light to be shot, then it's turned over to the director and all the other creative people, and I've generally worked with them into pre-production to change the script as needed, to work on locations, character things, write things that will serve the actors that are finally cast better, those kinds of things, and then once it's out shooting, they're on their own. So it's everything in television and film, it's all handled a little differently. Much of it really depends upon not only who you are as a writer, who's the director, what the producers want, how the studios operate, how the networks operate. It's all a little bit different. But it is a group effort.
Now, I've always wondered when I see credits, I'm one of those people who read all the credits. And, third assistant to the gaffer who is in charge of the honey wagon. But, well, I'm being a smart ass, but you know what I mean. And what is a producer and what is an executive producer?
Oh, well, they mean many different things. Always a great question. They mean many different things. An executive producer can be one of many people who is involved in either financing or finding the financing for a film. The executive producer may be an executive with the production company that has made the film or TV show, and they serve as a kind of in a kind of creative slash corporate capacity, and they can become an executive producer that way. Executive producer is usually a little less hands-on. When the term producer is generally more, or it's supposed to be, more the people who are literally on the set, getting the movie made and making sure everything is happening and it's in its place and all the pieces fit together technically, financially, and creatively while the movie is being shot, and then in pre-production and post-production. So producers are supposed to be a little more, the producer's title usually connotes a little more hands-on at the time of shooting. But it varies. People negotiate different titles. I've had a number of associate producer credits on my work, for various reasons. All these producer credits, they sometimes mean very different things, and sometimes they don't mean all that much. It just depends upon the situation.
I gotcha. And it's almost too confusing even for me to figure out.
Yeah.
For a normal person. Talking about Hallmark movies, we're doing this episode, folks, in the early part of September of 2022. Gary Goldstein, you have a Hallmark movie coming out. You can tell us the title, apparently.
Yes, I have a Hallmark movie, a romantic comedy coming out. It'll be the end of the year. The date hasn't been selected yet. It's a romantic comedy called Lights, Camera, Christmas, and it's a really fun story. I actually just finished shooting last week in Vancouver, and I haven't seen a cut of it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's a really fun movie to write, and I've written actually quite a few Christmas movies over the course of time, and as you know, Christmas movies have become really popular, not just on Hallmark, but Lifetime and Netflix and Hulu, and everybody's jumped on them, and tons of networks and streamers are doing Christmas movies now, and so it's you want to try to find what's the story that hasn't been done, and it's always like these variations on different Christmas stories, and they're very fun to write. I've written quite a few.
Lights, Camera, Christmas, we'll look for that. But in the bookstores, please, folks, look for The Last Birthday Party from Gary Goldstein. And when you have a chance, should be out soon, The Mother I Never Had, also by Gary Goldstein. Before we go, Gary, let's harken back a bit to your younger days. What were your favorite books and movies and TV shows way back when you were young?
Oh God, way back when. Well, I grew up reading a lot of books, and it sounds corny, but Catcher in the Rye was one of my favorites, and I remember reading like Great Gatsby, and when I was growing up, I always loved adventure movies about survival and things like that. So I watched a lot of those. I don't know. I look back. It's funny. You look back on things. Sometimes you watch a movie or a TV show, or read a book that you grew up with and loved. And sometimes I don't want to watch it again as a much older adult, because I want to retain the feeling I had when I first saw it, and sometimes it can be very disappointing, and then other times it really holds up well. So it depends, but like with books, I was, like I said, I was always a big reader as a kid. I was always reading something, and books were a really important part of my growing up, and happy to come back around to be writing them at this point in my career.
That's great. And like you say, if you want to be a writer, you have to be a reader. And I think a lot of people don't think that. But it's true. It's
right.
A read, and then write. And then, is it true you have to write what you know?
I think it helps. It helps to write what you know, but because there's authenticity to it. The key with that, though, is separating yourself from the truth enough to make it entertaining, or make it a story. Like a lot of things happen to us in life, and you say, "Oh, that would make a great movie, that would make a great book," but it's not a story; it's a moment, and it's how do you use the truth to inspire you to write fiction. If you're writing a fictional book, if you're writing a nonfiction book, that's a different animal. But generally, if you're writing fiction, it's how to really expand, your own life experiences and people you knew, and the things that you have felt and gone through, how to transfer them to other characters, keep your distance from them, keep an objectivity to them, and tell the story in the most, if it's a book, the most literary way, and if it's a movie, the most cinematic way, and not get hung up on just everything having to be the exact way it was, because things don't unfold in life like a movie or a book necessarily. So I think that's a big caution with writing what you know. And I think also, on the flip side, I say, writers write, and I've written about lots of people and lots of things and lots of environments that I have never experienced or know very little about, but I've done my research, and you find ways to make it feel authentic, and certainly bring in real human emotions and realism to things. But you don't always have to know everything. But I will say, if you're a first-time writer, it doesn't hurt to kind of draw on some actual experiences or experiences of people you do know, because it might just sort of help jumpstart the whole process a little bit more quickly. And because there'll be enough to do when you first start writing in learning how to tell your story. So if you have some of the elements in place, even if you have to fictionalize them, that can be a big help.
Gary Goldstein, look for his works on screen, especially Hallmark movies. Look for his works in the bookstore. One more thing, Gary, you have a website, I assume. Could you repeat it for us?
I do.
Yes.
I do. It's Gary Goldstein, LA. That's GaryGoldstein, LA.com. And I have tons of stuff about me, way more than you want to know, on that website. And I can also be followed at Gary Goldstein, LA on Twitter and Instagram. Please do. And just a shameless plug, Mother I Never Had will be available October 11th, available for pre-sale before and out in bookstores and anywhere you buy, any fine outlets on the internet you buy books on October 11th. And so great to talk to you, Dennis. I really appreciate all the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.